And we are live on YouTube. This is the Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 172. And we are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur Podcast, the podcast for men who win, with your host, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. This is awesome. I'm liking this new setup. It's cool. It's like a logo in your background. We got the logo in my background. And then we got the logo on the screen if you're watching us live here on video.
Man. We're all branded out, and I love it. And we'll be playing with it some more, but as it goes on, I'm getting more comfortable with the software, and I'm freaking loving it. And it's providing a good visual aspect for the podcast as well. And for the listeners that only listen to the podcast, let's actually plug the video real quick. Where can people go if they want to check out the video episodes?
Yeah, go to youtubeformen.com. Check us out there.
Awesome. Okay, so what do we have lined up for the listeners today?
Well, we're going to talk about the importance of specific skills or attributes, you can say, in having in each individual on your executive team. I think it's super important. What I've noticed is in talking to some of my colleagues and some of the organizations out there, when it comes to how they look for their executives in terms of recruit, how they actually interview them, and even how they appraise them in terms of their performance appraisals, a lot of people have things wrong. And I'm seeing this trend in terms of using personality assessments. This has been going on for a while. And I just wanted to kill some myths there and talk about the 6 most important elements or skills, you can say, that each person in your organization should have. If you have someone running your business, if you have someone managing staff, especially at your executive level, they need to have these 6 skills.
Okay, so first of all, I don't have executives, but I do have people that manage, and I also get, in my position, I get stuck managing a lot of people sometimes. So I think I'm going to do my best to keep up, but also I know that your background, you've worked with some much bigger businesses than I have, and you've worked in some probably scaled up versions of what I've had to deal with. So I'm just going to try and keep up with you this episode.
Yeah, let's have a good conversation. I think it's important because what I'm saying is, as a business owner, and I'm sure you could relate to this, Nathan, is a lot of the times is we end up trying to undo or fix things that someone on our team has, let's just say, I don't want to say screwed up, but they just haven't taken the right approach. And some people just literally screw up. And it's that time that we spend trying to fix issues, trying to put out fires, that really kills us, that drains our energy. And that's why it's important to have these 6 skills in the people that you trust to run your organization. Because you need, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, need to have that energy to be forward thinking, to be strategic, to be creative, to be able to take your business to the next level, to be able to optimize it. And a lot of people use this term, work on the business rather than in the business. And so it's important to factor in these elements for the people that you have running your business, and even yourself, right? Because if you're lacking in one of these 6 elements, it's a sign for you to actually step up your game as well.
Okay, so let's just jump into it and let's go through one by one these 6 different skills that you see as being important for executives and managers.
Sure. The first one is just the ability to lead people. That is the most common one. When people think about leaders, they're like, okay, a leader is someone who leads other people. So having those skills is important. Having the ability to influence, to be able to inspire other people, understanding people's motivation, for example, what their ability to hold people accountable. These are all things that fit in within leadership itself. This is where some personality assessments actually come in handy, and they actually help identify what a person's natural leadership style is, or even what their leadership style is under stress. So these things are kind of cool to have when you have assessments. But long story short, let's put it this way. If you have someone running your business, they have to be able to influence your staff, your employees, and they have to be able to lead people, not just within your organization, but externally as well. Your strategic partners, your clients, that is one of the most important skills.
So one thing that I've noticed is throughout our childhood and our schooling experience, and then a lot of times even in our work experience, the ability to lead is kind of beaten out of a lot of people. We're told, our parents tell us, because I said so. And our teachers tell us, hey, I'm the teacher. I sit at the front of the class and you just sit there and regurgitate what I tell you. And leadership is, in my opinion, it's one of the most important skills to have, especially as somebody who's trying to start your own business or run your own business. But it's also one of those things that not only seems neglected throughout most of our education, but seems actually to be kind of suppressed. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on how do we develop leadership skills when so much of the world is trying to beat leadership out of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think it really comes down to the context of what you're trying to be a leader in. Sometimes leadership can be seen in so many different ways. And I think the definition itself is so broad. But from my perspective, leadership is the ability to take a group of people or an individuals or an organization to a specific goal. So from point A to point B, that's what I believe leadership is, personally myself. So that can mean different things. For example, was Hitler a good leader? He probably was for his mission, right? He got things done, for example. So ultimately, a leader's role is to get the job done and get it done well and be able to repeat the process. So how do you learn these skills? Well, there's a lot of leadership books out there that you can learn. There's a lot of leadership training programs out there as well. This is probably one of the areas that there is so much knowledge out there that it's easy to develop those skills. But ultimately, what it comes down to is practice, right? You have to be able to practice. And here's something that I have learned is you get the practice and you get the skills by leading difficult people through difficult situations. Because it's in those times that you realize what you need to do or try a different approach to be able to influence someone through a tough situation. And I always say, like, when I have a tough client, when I have a tough employee, when I have tough situations in my family, with in-laws, whatever it is, I look at it as a challenge because I'm always looking back and saying, how can I change my influence style or my ability to motivate or influence this individual to do something differently? So it's a learning game.
That's one of the things I love about you, man. You're like, I'm like, hey, Purdeep, I don't know how to swim. How do I learn how to swim? And you're just like, just jump in the deep end.
Yeah, you're gonna sink or you're gonna swim, but most of the time, you will swim. I think that's all it is. A lot of people have, and this is one of the biggest things that I see for individuals who are leaving the world of being in the corporate world or a typical career and getting into business, that is one area that they are challenged with, is the leadership, because now they have to lead other people within their own organization. It's different to lead people within a corporate world than it is to lead someone in your own business. It is completely different because now you're paying the bills. Now you're responsible. You don't have someone else doing that in terms of forking out the bill for these individuals. It's you doing it, and it's a different context.
Okay, nice. So we've got leadership down. What is the next skill that an executive or a manager must have?
So it could. So we're going to do them kind of in random order here, but the next one is the ability to predict the future. And so I'm not saying having a crystal ball, but being able to predict future situations. So this or individual, or let's just say this specific skill, is the ability to actually do some scenario analysis, to think ahead of the game, to be 5 steps ahead. It's really important to have this skill because it's not that you're going to be able to predict exactly what's going to happen. Most of the time you're going to be wrong, but at least you'll be able to identify what could happen. And here's the most important thing: how you react to each situation. That is fundamentally what you want to have as a result of being able to predict the future, is to be able to move faster if you see the signs of that actually happening. So that's why in military, for example, they plan out all these different situations or scenarios, because they know if scenario A happens, this is how we're going to react. If scenario B happens, this is how we're going to react. And so it's important to do that. But a lot of people don't have that ability, because here's what we do with a lot of our managers or executives is we pile on a bunch of work for them to do, daily tasks, and they can't think strategically because they're so stuck at I got to get this done now that they're unable to think about the future.
I think also just the way that we are as humans, a lot of times we're just stuck in reactionary mode. Something happens
Mm.
and then we decide to how we're going to respond to it. To actually think 2 or 3 steps ahead is it's not one of those skills that people are taught. And I think that maybe if I was in charge of the school system, maybe I wouldn't want people being able to predict stuff that was going to be coming down the line. Just like I wouldn't want a bunch of leaders. It's hard to manage a bunch of leaders. So both of these two are definitely things that you have to teach yourself. Somebody's not going to come and hold your hand and be like, "Hey, here's some vital skills that you need to make yourself a lot more independent and capable and less dependent on me as the person in charge of the school system."
Yeah, it's really important because we always say that the two most important things when it comes to business is innovation and marketing. Those are two important elements. But also the third one is strategy. You have to be able to be strategic because that aligns right in line with innovation and marketing. You have to be strategic in your approach. And again, it is something that you have to learn over time.
Okay, so we've got the ability to lead, the ability to predict, and what's next on the checklist today?
Well, here's an interesting one, which is the ability to execute. So I see this so much, so often. And it just makes me laugh because this is something that I think plagues the motivational world, the speakers out there. I actually reached out to a gentleman, and he's actually an old teacher of mine, and I'm going to have him on this podcast. He was one of the most influential teachers I've come across my entire life, and I haven't seen him in 20 plus years. Sent an email, and he responded by saying, "It looks like you're doing well." I can't remember exactly what he said, but as a motivational speaker, and I kind of cringed inside because I don't want to be a motivational speaker. I don't consider myself to be a motivational speaker because that's not what gets results done. Execution is actually what gets things done. That's why you have to have a process and a system and accountability and measurements to be able to get there. That's where execution comes in. So you can have people that think strategically, you can have people that are able to lead, but can they get the job done? Can they actually take your organization from point A to point B?
I think a lot of times, I know this is true for myself, but it's also been true, I've noticed, with a lot of the people that I work with. When I go into a business, a lot of times they're like, "Yeah, we want to market, but we don't have a clear plan of action." So a lot of times they confuse lack of execution or maybe procrastination with just not having a clear plan.
Now, I'm telling you, this is the biggest challenge I see for the men I work with, for organizations. It's not necessarily, well, first of all, a lot of people need help with their strategic plan in the first place because their strategic plan ends up just being a bunch of fluff, right? It's pie in the sky stuff, but it's not actually tactical approaches, but it's executing. That is the most important. Like, I can't tell you how many guys will talk about one thing. We got the plan and be like, "Okay, that's ready. You're ready to go." "Yeah, I got it." They're totally motivated. They're inspired to go. And then we'll speak a month later and it's like, "Okay, let's talk about the progress." "Well, I got busy doing this," or "I got that." And I said, "Okay, now we got to talk about execution. We got to talk about how you manage yourself because that is what leads to traction. It's what do you do on a daily basis within yourself as an individual, but also as an organization that actually gets you to the results."
Okay, so another one that you have on here is problem solving skills. And I think as an entrepreneur, this is kind of like a duh. I mean, that's what we do is we find problems and we try to figure out ways to solve them. But as an executive, how does that apply?
Well, it's pretty much the same thing because if you have someone that is running your organization, that is your chief operating officer, your chief executive officer, whoever it is, again, it goes back to that point of if you are the one that has to solve everybody's problems, then you got an issue. You want your team players to be able to solve your problems because then you're free to do the other stuff that you need to. So having people on your team that can solve problems is important because it frees you up to do everything else that you need to do.
Okay, so this next one that you have, I might be a little bit mistaken on this. You have being creative or creativity as one of the skills that's important as an executive. I've always kind of felt like I'm blessed in my position because I usually walk into a lot of very successful businesses, and being a marketer means that I'm one of the only people that's allowed to be creative. A lot of creativity seems shunned in almost every other aspect of the business, where I get to just pull out my crayons and draw all day and play around and let's test this and let's see how this works. So I've always felt like I was one of the only people that was allowed to actually express my creativity in the workplace. But you're saying that for executives, creativity is something important for them as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely important. I think it's one of the most important skills that you can have as an individual, as a human being. Creativity is, I would put it at number one or two. Being strategic and having creativity and being able to innovate is number two for me, because that is what enables you to have those ideas. That's what enables you to get past those roadblocks. And yes, it should be in every area of your business, not just marketing. You should be able to be creative in finance. You should be able to be creative in risk. You should be able to be creative in your client experience, in your operations. This is one of the biggest challenges that organizations face, is they leave creativity or innovation to a specific department. It could be the innovation department, or marketing is typically considered to be innovative, but it has to be within the entire organization. This is something I'm so passionate about because this is my background. This is one of the areas that I really dove into from a corporate perspective, education perspective. Got my MBA in innovation leadership. I learned a ton when I went to MIT and Stanford when it came to the innovation studies I did there, because they are considered the two most innovative organizations, definitely in the U.S. when it comes to academic institutions, business institutions, but maybe even in the world. And so it creates an environment. You have to be able to create an environment where people are able to be creative in every department, in every division of your business. It can't just be left to one person or one area. It has to be built into the culture.
So why do you think that there is the kind of like the stereotype of the board of executives, and they're all stuffy and they're all very much by the book, and it seems like when I think of executives, I think of the exact opposite of creativity, and I know I'm not the only one. I know that that's actually a pretty common way for the environment among the executives to be, is very stifling of creativity. Why is that?
Well, the most of the time, people are afraid of creativity. Because they don't know how to be creative themselves. They've had it beat out of them. So if you're not a creative, I shouldn't say that. I never want to say this, because everybody is a creative individual if they actually allow themselves to be. If they actually unleash their thinking. That's why in the Complete Mind book, I talk about unlocking your genius, your inner genius, because you can absolutely do that. Every person has this ability. You just have to be able to get past that daily block that you have. So if individuals don't have that same foresight, if they don't have that same ability at this time, they're typically afraid of it. And this is typically what ends up happening in organizations, and why creativity and innovation get stifled, is because it changes how people have to operate. And anytime someone has to think about or actually change the way they operate, they automatically think, am I going to become obsolete? Am I still going to be able to provide the value that I provided before? Or are people going to think, okay, this person's not valuable anymore. We're going to let them go. We're not going to give them a raise. Someone else is going to be more valuable because they're more creative. This is something that is just an intuitive thing that every human being goes through. So you have to be able to create a safe environment for everybody else in the organization to say, yes, we are going to be creative. Yes, you will have to change your ways, but yes, we are going to support you. We're going to give you the training. We're going to give you you can say the latitude to be able to grow into this. So fear and not understanding is a big reason why people end up stifling innovation.
I think also, if we just do things by the book and something goes wrong, we can just blame the book. I was just doing what the book said. But if we be creative and something goes wrong, oh, okay, this falls on my shoulders now. So I think that uh,
Mm.
in order to avoid that responsibility, it's a lot easier to go with what the book says rather than to step out on a limb and be creative. The last one that you've got on the list today just says learn. What does that mean?
Yeah, I should say learn and adapt. It's the ability to be able to evolve. It's the ability to actually pick something up that's different than what you're doing and actually become a master at it. Learning is such an important skill. It is, sorry, I should have said that. The top three skills in terms of learning creativity and strategy, but learning is important. It is so critical because if you have people on your team that don't have, let's just say they're uh, slow learners, it's going to be a challenge for you because the environment continues to change. And this is what we see in organizations. And we see technology is rapidly changing. We're seeing society is slowly changing. We see processes and operations changing at a good rate. But the human capital within an organization doesn't necessarily keep up because people aren't able to learn and adapt as fast. And so, if you have a learning and adapting executive or a learning and adapting organization, a culture around that, you're going to be able to outpace your competition. It is so critical to find people that are not just have the ability, but are hungry to learn and adapt, that are hungry and open to it, and people that pick up books on their own. Like it's, you don't want to have to, and I've gone through this so many times. Hey, I think you should read this book, and I'll talk to them 2 months later. Hey, did you pick up that book? No, not yet. Hey, I think you should get this book. Give them these subtle hints. But if this person doesn't want to learn on their own, you got to challenge. Nathan, I can speak from example. One of the things that allowed me to outpace my competition, whether in the entrepreneurial world or in the corporate world, was this. If I saw someone with a book on their desk, another one of my colleagues, another VP or whoever it was, I would get that book and finish it before they would. That was my motto. And that led me to outpace. I was the youngest executive on my team when my last role, you can say. And it allowed me to beat everybody else because I could have those conversations with those individuals and a lot of times even have more knowledge than they would. So you have to be able to keep up and stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, that love of learning is so important, and so many people think that, oh, I graduated, I got my diploma, I got my master's degree, my learning is done. Learning happens in the schoolroom, and again, one of those things where I think that we teach kids very early on. Learning is at school, and really, I mean, if you just look at kids, they're just constantly learning because and kids have that desire to learn, but we after 12 or 18 years, we train them that learning is what happens at school. And it's the people that are like, no, learning is something that I love to do. Those are the people that take it beyond that. Okay. So we went through a bunch of stuff today, Purdeep, and man, I really had fun with this episode. So I'm thankful that you put this checklist together. And if people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, catch us in two places. If you want to see us live, check out YouTube for Men. And if you want to hear our audio, go to mailpodcast.com.
All right, man. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.